Hello and welcome to Pro Modeler. I'm Philip Flory and today we're going to be building the P-40 Warhawk. This is the Hasegawa kit, it's the new one, it's the new 132 kit. Okay, what do you get in the box? Very nice decals, which we'll probably be using the old Tiger, Flying Tiger. Got your normal set of instructions with your normal sort of call-outs and your colour call-outs, nothing new there. Clear sprue, separate bag, which is a nice touch. Different types of canopies and things. We're going to be talking quite in detail about that because there is a fault. Obviously, with the breakdown of the tooling, we just pop these out of the way. As we can see, we've got various tails because obviously the different Warhawks had different types of tails and things like that. So if we just whip them out of the bags a moment, we can have a quick look. See what we get. I've had a look obviously on the net, various reviews and things like that on this, but what it does is apparent is the lovely tooling and the engraving on the parts. Very, very nice detail. Quite a nice detailed instrument panel as well as the cockpit itself. It's not rubber tyres on this. We've actually got two halves of tyre which will go in for the hubs as well. So we've got that. It's a little bit greasy to the touch, so I'm presuming this is one of the early kits that were made. Obviously when they do the first few hundred off the run, they tend to be a little bit more oily sometimes than others. But as I say, looking at the lovely little the riveting detail and various bits and pieces on the wings and things like that, it really is nice. Nice one piece underside wing. Shame it's not separate flaps and things like that, admittedly, but you know, make up everything. But there we go, and there's the front fuselage with that very, very distinctive bottom of the engine there. So what we're going to do, we're going to obviously get ourselves all prepared, all sorted out, and we'll get going on the cockpit. Okay, so we've got some of the parts all off the sprues, we've got all the major cockpit parts, and we've cleaned them all up, we've sanded off all the little stubs and bits and pieces like that. We've got the cockpit parts out as well, because obviously then we can spray up on the inside and things like that. Now it's nicely detailed on the inside. It's got quite nice mouldings of obviously piping and panelling on the sides, but there is some little details to add on to that which we'll do in a moment. Obviously with the actual the bulkheads here, we can get those actually installed and in. It's quite straightforward. So this big large one at the back is going to fit in here, and what we'll do is we'll just get some glue in there, let the capillary action flow all the way around like so. So that's that one in, and then we can actually put in the part of the cockpit. So we put a drop or two in the holes, just one in there, one in there, a couple at the top, just like that, and this way it will actually give us the right angle we need on the seats as well. So that is going to sit just like that in there. We'll bring you in a little bit. So that's in, and that can now start to dry just off to one side like that for a moment. Now on the sides we've got things like our little throttle quadrant that we've got down here and the other little bits and pieces. So we'll just get the throttle quadrant in. Getting a bit low on the old glue. Okay, so obviously we're going to put our lever to the top. That's going to sit on. Now you could do it afterwards, spray it all green, put it black and put it in, but for the sake of, you know, actually going to hand paint it and bits and pieces like that, it's just as easy and as quick to do it like this. So what we're going to do now, we've got our little cap, just going to slide. He says open, if we just grab a pin, we can hopefully just flip this over. Open. There we go. So that one goes in like that, and then we've got this angled piece here, which is going to go to just above the little box at the back here. Just going to go just in like that, and fits in like there. So that's those three parts there, because that's the selector switch down there. So that's that one done. Also what we can do at the same time, we've actually got this, the back of the instrument panel can go on. So if we just put 2 drops in like that, and then making sure we get this one the right way up. That's it. That'll fit in there just like that. If we've got other parts to go on there. So we just put a little bit more to weld that around. And what we'll do on the back of this instrument panel, because it is very noticeable because of the glass, you can actually look down into it. We're going to put some wiring out the back, which we'll use a little bit of fuse wire for that, and some cotton to give the effect of wiring coming out the back. So that's that one. And then on the other side, if I remember correctly, we just got this little one at the top. This drop of glue just in up here, and you've got this one, and the handle goes to the front, and this is the winder handle for the canopy. So there we go, that's in there. The point of doing these now, it gets them out of the way, because obviously the trouble is when you're hand painting, especially in a tight area and you've washed and various cockpits and bits and pieces like that, then you come along at a later date and you think, right, okay, now it's time to, you know, glue these in, and obviously the glue then affects your paint and all types of troubles can then happen. So by doing it all in one, you can pick it out, and obviously because you'll dry brush after it perhaps, or whichever type of weathering you may do with washes and things like that, that it'll actually just blend it all in anyway, so you wouldn't have to worry too much about any damaging and bits and pieces caused. This is where you're going to have to pick out your various colours. Obviously looking at the references, they say obviously one thing for one thing, you look at other things and they're different things. So obviously check your references for the actual one. Seat is aluminium. Various call out them to be in different colours, but we know for a fact it's aluminium. So we just let those parts dry for a moment. Okay, so now we can get our first bit of paint on. So obviously we've got the side panels done, and I put the control sticks, columns in as well, is in there, and obviously we'll do the sides of the fuselage as well. So we're going to be using the interior green, which is the Valero one, which is 010, with your black tops for the Model Air. So then what we'll do, we're just going to pop a bit of this neat into the old colour cup. Now, we've used this stuff before, so remember it's going to be quite thin when we go on. So we're going to put nice light coats down. Pretty much, what are we on? About 35 psi air, because we're going to be putting this straight onto neat plastic. So we're going to build this up nice and gently, just like so. Then we're going to cut to air just to dry that back. Move on to the next part. Obviously we'll come back to it again. Remember to get in there from all the angles. Okay, and then the same for this one. Okay, and the insides. Now we don't really have to worry too much about the insides here. All we're doing really is just a precautionary thing in case anything shows through. So we're just bringing the low one out, which is far up the tank. Okay, that's done, and we can go back to the first one again, and we'll just repeat until we're all totally painted. Okay, so what we're going to do now is those parts are all drying. We can get them painted up in a minute. We're just going to spray the flat black onto the instrument panel here, both sides, basically absolutely everywhere, and then we can dry brush and with a little bit of the light wash and bits and pieces, and pick out the switches. We can bring it all to life. Now the one thing we're going to do, I'm just going to paint this black roughly, as we're doing now, and then we're going to add a little bit of wiring, as I said, to the back of it, because when you look down through the canopy, or through the would be the sort of the windscreen, you're actually going to see it quite prominent at the back. So we're just going to do that, and we'll dry that off. And the other thing as well, I'm going to do black. Now, you know, this is one of those things again. Some people say that the cushion for the headrest at the back, obviously some people say it's leather, others people say it's black. Obviously, you know, the instructions call out one thing and various bits and pieces. So it's one of those things, I think, where nobody is really wrong. Obviously, every aircraft was slightly different. And that's the thing. I'm going to do it in black. Just like that. Nice little dusty coat. Nothing too flamboyant. Let's poke that in over there. Right, now as we've got the colour cup here with the paint in it, what we're going to do is a little bit of hand painting. I'm just going to pick out the dials, or sort of the little switchology on the side in the little panels. So if we take it out the colour cup like this, if we stand it up, we can just come along and we can pick out the boxes, the switches, and then what will happen is obviously we'll go around and we'll dry brush. And if you've seen the P-47 build that I did, you'll see how I actually go about washing the interiors out, and then by going back with some dry brushing, it brings it all to life. So I'll just get all these little bits painted up. Okay, so we've got these parts all sort of painted up a bit now. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pop around now with a little bit of the light wash, giving it a good shake, lots and lots of bubbles, because that's what we want. We want the bubbles off the top, really. Okay, and then all we're going to do, let me just move those out of the way a moment. We just bring you in. Okay, so there we go. Out a little bit to get you focus. All right, and then all we're going to do is pick out these dials, just like this. Now we don't want to go totally everywhere with it. We just want to pick out the individual dials themselves. So we're just going to go round, and this is hopefully going to work along with our bit of pre-shading that we'll do. Pull that along there like so. Just want it in this area here roughly. So what we're going to do, we'll let that dry just like that, and then we're going to come back and then we're going to wipe it all out, and hopefully it all goes well. It will leave behind the wash in there, and then when we go back we can just pop along the top with a little bit of dry brushing just on the top to really bring it all to life and make it all stand out. Okay, so that's drying. We're just going to make up our simple wash. Obviously you could use the Pro Modelers, but this tends to give it a little bit more of a dirty look. Okay, 1 drop of flat black. Okay, 2 drops of thinners, or 3 drops of thinners, and then he says just grabbing some, a couple of drops of water. 2, 3, 4, like so. Okay, just like that, and then take your medium type of brush, okay, and give it a good mix. Now people have said to me, why do I do this and not use other things? Twofold. Firstly, because this has got the water in, it stops it eating into the paintwork quite as much. It will obviously still eat into the paintwork, but hopefully nowhere near as much as it would if it's got the thing on. So if it was just thinners, obviously if we're brushing like this, we'd have to be very careful at what we're doing, because we wouldn't want to be doing it too much, otherwise we're literally going to rub off that paint. So the water just gives you that little delay and helps you get the wash where you want it to. Now the reason it has the thinners is because then it gives it the nice capillary action, so it will run round everywhere and get in amongst it all. Now it always looks a little bit dark when you first put it on, as you probably saw there. So if we just come around here, but obviously as this dries it will lighten. And then obviously don't forget, we're going to go back and we're going to dry brush everywhere with it as well. But this will just give us a nice little dirty, oily type look in there, and then we're going to pop around with a little bit of silver and dry brush it all up. So that's that one, and then obviously just this last one here. Okay, now the reason I don't use the wash for this is because it's in such a tight little area. Obviously trying to get the wash out in between all of this can be a bit of a handful. So really that's why I'm not using the wash, and I know a lot of people tend to think I use it for absolute everything, and certainly for exteriors, large areas, I will use the wash every single time. But for tight little areas like this, wheel wells, things like that, things where it's really quite tight to get in there, then I won't. I will actually use this. So we just do the back and the bulkhead. Sorry, just back here. Obviously we've got to put the cushion in yet. We just get all in amongst there, like that, outside of the control sticks and columns. And there we go, that can then start to dry off. Let that totally dry before obviously you come back at it with your actual dry brushing. Otherwise what happens is it will soften the top skin of the paint, the green on there. So obviously if you come back, it rub off far too easy. So we don't want that. So we just let that dry for a moment. Okay, so that's all been drying there now. So what we've got here is the instrument panel. That's all we do. Got a cotton bud. I'm just going to moisten it a little bit, and we're just going to give a gentle rub around just to get all the excess off everywhere we go. So we don't want to take too much, but we need to take enough to make the dials all totally stand out now. Don't have to get it all dry, slightly lighter again when we're done. So there we go. So that gives us our dials looking like that, which I think comes out very well. Then all we'll do, we're going to take some, I'll use a bit of Citadel here. I'm going to use the actual gun bolt to dry brush around with, because I don't want it to be too stark a contrast. So all we'll do, we'll take our big flat brush, just like this. If I bring you out a bit, take a little bit of gun bolt, load up the brush and push it through so it soaks all the way through, and then we're going to knock off as much as we possibly can. And we'll just reload it up again, let it soak in a bit. Same thing, knock off as much as we can. Okay, and then using just the tips, we're just going to brush it very gently right over the panel. And just give it a little bit of depth and a little bit of wear and tear. And there we go. We'll bring you in. We end up with something like that. So we've got a little bit of yellow work still to go on there and a few other bits and pieces to pick out, but you get the gist. Okay, so then we've got the panel here. Same thing. Just gonna very lightly back and forth, up and down, all over, just to bring that to life. Same on the other side. It's still a little bit wet in places, so we just have to be somewhat careful, but in other ways what it does when it's slightly wet and you do pick it up, it gives it that sort of smearing effect, which is quite nice. Okay, so we've got the fuel gauges on the floor there and the fuel lines and the bits and pieces. So obviously scuffing the floor, just give it a bit of a rub where the feet are going to go. And as I say, at the back around the bulkhead there, down the sides, bases of the control sticks, and then just a very light brush over the actual control columns themselves will actually give that look of wear and tear that we need. So there we go, that's that done as well. So we're all basically ready for going together now. Now we've still got to do the wiring on the back of the instrument panel, but I'm just going to dry brush the back of it as well, just so we've got to get in. And obviously there's the HUD to go on. There's a few other bits and pieces to go on there, but for the moment it just keeps it all together. Right, the other thing we're going to do is the seat. Obviously harnesses would be nice if they came with the kit, but they don't. You can obviously get aftermarket ones. We're going to use some Tamiya tape, or some jammy tape probably, to do that. So what we need to do is, first of all, we need to spray this seat up and get it all silver so we can get all the harnesses in and put it all in one. Okay, so we've got the cockpit parts done. All we've actually done here is obviously painted the seat silver, and it's just got some dark Pro Modeller's wash on there, which will give it some shading, so that'll dry off. Also, we've used some jammy tape, which is obviously the nice thin stuff here. I think this is the 1.5mm. All I've actually done is peel a piece off like this, just like that, and then fold it back on itself and just roll it back. And obviously it takes a bit to line up, but once you're on there you can just fold it onto itself like that. Painted it obviously brown with some acrylic, and there we go. We've got some straps, some harnesses, which obviously when this is dry and we've got this sort of excess wash off, we can actually then give it some harnesses, just like that. And obviously what we'll do, we'll get it with a little bit of silver paint as well to make buckles, things like that. And then if we need to, we can actually just put some, just by laying it down, you can actually put a pin and make some actually buckle holes and little details like that, just to bring it all to life. So that's those bits done. As I say, the panel is all sort of finished and done as well now. I've put together the actual air cooling system that goes in the front. It's quite simple. It's just 4 parts, big bits at the back, both go in, and then this top front bit goes in there as well. Now, you're not going to see a massive amount looking down there. It's quite a small little narrow gap at the front, but it's nice to do. So what we're going to do, we're going to deviate slightly from the instructions here, because I'm going to use XF4, which is Yuck Yellow, commonly known, and it's the yellow zinc chromate type of thing. And what we'll do, we're going to paint this area in here, and then obviously all of this in here, and then we'll pick out obviously the fan, the little fan radiators in there for the cooling as well. And we can pick them out either with a wash or with a bit of silver and some dry brushing. So what we're going to do, we're going to load up neat straight into the airbrush, and we're just going to paint these areas here. Okay, so we've got the neat paint, and we're just going to straight into the colour cut. It's just had a bit of a shake. Dribble off there. It's just literally had a shake, that's all that's happened. Alright, and then we're just going to check our flow, and we're all coming through okay. Now obviously we'll just do the back part, and because it's neat, it's not going to take a great deal to cover. So that's the back half done. We'll just work our way around to the front half. There we go. Oops. We just stick that way up. Just like that. And we just do these fronts. There's one. And two. Just run this one a little bit further back. There we go, just like that. Okay, so we've got the seat. So all we're going to do, it's almost dry. Dry cotton bud. It's not been moistened because there's a little bit of moisture left on the seat. I hope you can see that. Comes up very nicely, and it gives you that nice bit of shading and that nice little bit of weathering as well, because obviously where we're rubbing with a dry cotton bud even, the wash will rub against the actual metal finish, and it will give you the different tones of metal finish as well as on there. So there we go, that's that done, as I say. And then what we can do, we can then attach these homemade harnesses that we've got here to the back of the seat. and we can super glue them and anchor them in, and then we can pull them over, put them into position how we want them, and then actually cut them to length once they're there. And then we can add little silver bits of buckle, and there's lots of ways we could use that. We could use aluminium foil, leftover photo etch parts, or just paint it. Whichever way you want to do it, it's totally up to you. So we get those bits stuck on the back. So for that we're going to use a tiny little bit of super glue. I'll just bring you out a little bit. Okay, now they're always in a little V block at the back, so we're just going to put a spot. Just need to open that up. Always remember to clean your needle after doing that, otherwise you end up with quite a bit at the back. Okay, bit of a bob. Okay, so we just take a bit on the cocktail stick onto the back. Okay, then we're just going to sit one on, just like that, and then we come over with the other one. Remember to make a little V just at the edge, just like that, and then that way it will dry on there like that, and then once it's totally dry we can then bend them over, pull them down, and then we'll do the same for the side harnesses coming over from the side as well. So we'll leave that just to dry, and we'll do that in stages so that bit can dry first. Now on here, as I say, we've painted up these side bits, so these in a moment can just literally slide together as it will, just like this, to give us our nice cockpit bits like that. But it'll be easier to put the seat in, then the sides on, and then obviously the instrument panel in there as well. So that's those parts. Now the other thing we can do for the moment, we can just fit the actual air scoop in. So that's just going to line up just like so, and then using our extra thin, we're just going to run it from the inside and let the capillary action zip round. But by doing it from the inside we won't affect any of that paintwork. So that goes in there just like so, and we just put a little bit at that top bracket up there. So there we go, that's that drying. So we'll leave that to one side just to dry just for a few moments. Okay, so there's the seat done. He says, there we go. All that is as I say, a little bit of tape, painted brown, and then picked out the harnesses with some silver paint, just like that. And then all I've done, the dots that you can see running down the back, I just used the scribing needle and just stabbed it all the way down, just to give that effect. So that's that. Okay, so what we can do in a moment, we can fit that to the seat at the back here. So if we just do a little bit of test fitting to see how this is actually going to all fit in. And there we go, that all fits in just like so, just in there like that. If I bring you in a bit. There we go, so as you can see that fits in there very, very nicely, and we'll go in just like that.